Hello there, my name is Mike Lindsay and I'm the General Manager with Dalmax. In previous Dalmax videos, we tested the relative strengths of different wood joints made using different wood joinery tools available on the market. In this video today, we're going to look at the wood joinery tools themselves. So I found a workshop where all of these tools are available, and I've split the bench into two application areas. Applications that are traditionally done with biscuit joints and applications that are traditionally done with mortise and tenon joints. The tools that we're going to look at are a biscuit joiner, a pocket hole jig, a mortiser for making traditional mortise and tenon joints, a router mortise and tenon jig, and a domino joiner, and of course the Dalmax. So to start with, we'll look at the biscuit joiner. This is a good quality biscuit joiner. It retails for around about $300 in the store. The way it works is that you locate your workpiece on the bench, secure it, and then push the tool into the workpiece to push a cutter to machine a slot to accept the biscuit. The type of joint that you get, most people are familiar with. It's a fairly slack fitting joint that doesn't have a lot of penetration. When we strength test this joint against the multiple dowel joint is 3 times as strong as what the biscuit joint is. So the biscuit doesn't really add any strength. It mainly aids in alignment of the workpieces when you're doing a glue up and clamping. The biscuit joiner is typically used in applications like laminating a tabletop together or putting kitchen cabinet carcasses together, which is what it was designed for in the first place when it was invented in the 50s, was for putting kitchen cabinets together out of melamine. It does not have the strength required to be used in areas where you typically use or traditionally use a mortise and tenon joint. So that's the biscuit joiner. Moving on to the pocket hole jig. This jig retails for around about $200. You're using special drills and special screws that add to the cost of the joinery. The joint that it produces is something that everybody is familiar with. It has the exposed joinery holes which are not hidden. In terms of strength, if we test this against the multiple dowel is over twice as strong as what the pocket hole joint is. So it doesn't have the strength to be used for the traditional mortise and tenon joint. Where it is used is usually for cabinet carcasses. I find that this tool lacks some precision when you're using it. The workpiece can move around, the joinery is a little rough. I don't consider it to be any kind of furniture grade joinery. Really only good for using for kitchen cabinets. Moving on to the mortiser. This is used for making traditional mortise and tenon joints. The difficulties with this machine are that you're attempting to drill and chisel a square hole into the workpiece. You have to keep the chisel sharp, and there's some setup to do to keep the drill working well with the chisel. You're never going to get the mortised hole perfect. There's always going to be chisel marks. It's never going to be perfectly smooth, which means there's going to be some gaps between the tenon and the mortise no matter how tight you make it, and that has some implications for the strength of the joint. The big drawback with the mortise and tenon, or the mortiser, to make mortise and tenon joints is the amount of time that it takes. It takes the average person 45 minutes per joint to make the mortise and the accommodating tenon. If you have a huge or large project, that's a huge amount of time. If you have 70 or 80 joints, that's a huge amount of time to spend doing joinery for a project. When we test the multiple dowel joints against joints made using the mortiser, we're as strong as the very best mortise and tenon joints that you can make. We're usually 30% stronger because of the difficulties of making the mortise and tenon joint perfect, which we've already discussed. So using the multiple dowels with Dalmax, we can make something that is stronger, more accurate, and takes a fraction of the time. So there is not a good argument or there is no argument for using the mortiser to make traditional mortise and tenon joints. Moving on to the router jig for mortise and tenon. This retails for around about $900. It requires that you use a plunge router with it, which if you don't have that, that will add another $300 to the setup. It makes good, strong mortise and tenon joints that are on par with the strength and accuracy of joints made with Dalmax. It does not have the versatility to use in the traditional biscuit joint type applications. The other issue with this jig is that it's bench mounted, which means that you are limited in terms of the length of workpiece that you can tenon. If you have a workpiece that is 5 or 6 feet long, you may need to build an elevated bench for this jig and then use some kind of a stepladder arrangement to move yourself up to be in position to use the router with the jig in its elevated position. Okay, so moving on to the domino joiner. This retails for around about $800. There are some accessories that go along with it that you may need that will add to the cost of the tool. You need to use it with the dust extraction system, and otherwise when you're drilling the mortises it will clog up. So you need to have a shop vac to connect to the dust collection system, or you need to buy a shop vac to use with this tool. The way it works is you secure the workpiece to the bench, you position the domino on to the workpiece, and then plunge the proprietary cutter to cut the slot for the proprietary tenon. There is no way to secure the tool to the workpiece, so there is some vibration when you're using it. The implication of that is that if you look very closely at the joints, you will see some gaps between the tenon and the mortise, and that has implications for the strength of the joint. There are also some limitations on how closely spaced you can make use the dominoes to make the joint. So you can make the joint tight using the tightest setting on the domino, but it does not have the precision or the close spacing of the dowels that you can make using the Dalmax. There's also a setting on the domino that enables you to cut the mortise wider than what the actual tenon is, to give you some room for movement in the case that you have some slight positional error when you're using the tool. So the approach is different than using the multiple dowels with the Dalmax, where the dowels are all perfectly aligned so that they go together without any gaps. Using a sequence of dominoes, there would be some movement, and it does not have the precision or the accuracy or the strength of the multiple dowels either used in the this type of application or this type of application. So that's the domino joiner. So finally, with the Dalmax, we have the Dalmax on the biscuit joint applications. We also have it on the mortise and tenon joint applications. The retail price for the Dalmax kit is around about $330. Relative to the biscuit joint and the pocket hole jig, it excels at the applications that they're used for, but it does it with much greater precision and accuracy and strength. Relative to the mortiser, it's less expensive. The joints that you can produce using the Dalmax are as strong as the very best joints that you can make using the mortiser, but usually 30% stronger. They're more accurate, and you can do them in a fraction of the time. It's also more versatile than the mortiser in that you can use it for the biscuit joint type of applications. Relative to the router mortise and tenon jig, it's as accurate as the router jig. The joints are slightly stronger than you can make. It's also more versatile because you can use it for the biscuit joint type applications, and the cost of the Dalmax is roughly about 1/3 of what you would pay for the router jig. Relative to the domino, the Dalmax is just as versatile, but the joinery produced using standard drills and standard dowels is more precise, it's more accurate, and it's stronger. And the cost of the Dowelmax is 1/3 of what the cost of the Domino is. So we guarantee that the Dowelmax is the strongest, most accurate, most versatile, and most cost-effective system on the market, and we'll back that up with a 60-day money-back guarantee. So thanks very much for watching.